Good morning, friends, and welcome to the Biblical Perspective for Saturday, July the 9th, 2022. Coming to you from Winsboro, South Carolina. This is Pastor Craig Bailey, and we look every Saturday at what's been happening in the world this week and how it relates to Bible prophecy and scriptural principles. And in particular, we've been working on a series entitled The Horns of the Beast. We've been identifying different people that we think may be fitting into that prophecy of Daniel chapter 7. A beast that would rule the world in the end times that had 7 heads and 10 horns. Those horns being the source of power that allows that beast to rule the world. We've identified some of those, and this past week, instead of going to another one of the horns, we have watched the beast at work so much this week that that's what I wanted to make the subject of our video this morning. The beast at work. We've seen it happening in so many different areas, in so many different ways this week. I can't touch on all of them. I'm just going to try to hit 3 for you today because they seem to be so obvious, at least to me, but I'm not sure that we're paying attention like we should. The first thing that really caught my attention and I think was important to grasp is the story of Jose Alba, the 61-year-old bodega owner in New York City, who's been there working the long hours with an honest job, just trying to make a living for he and his family, who was attacked by a known criminal who's got a rap sheet as long as your arm. When his girlfriend tried to buy a bag of chips, but her debit card wouldn't work, and the bodega owner wouldn't just give her the chips anyway, she reacted violently, even pulling a knife on the bodega owner. Of course, when she went to get her boyfriend to express her anger and outrage, he comes back and attacks the bodega owner, breaks in behind the counter, and begins to violently assault him, throw him down, strike him. And of course, Jose fears for his life, eventually gets his hands on a knife and stabs the attacker. The attacker dies, and Jose should be lifted up as a hero, one who was able to defend himself against a violent criminal who came in. And as fear, in fear of his life, he reacted as probably any of us would hope that we would, to defend ourselves in a similar circumstance. But the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, there in New York City, locks up Jose Alba, puts a charge of murder on him, and sets a $250,000 bail, and sends him to Rikers. Are you kidding me? Now, this kind of a high bail for this kind of lower income American means he's going to have to stay in jail. He's not going to get out. Keep in mind, this is one of the same attorneys that has been releasing violent criminals onto the streets of New York. He's one of those that pushes the little or no bail policy for these violent offenders, yet he takes this citizen who was just defending himself and throws him in jail and charges him with murder. Now, that bail got reduced later to $50,000. The mayor of New York steps in and talks about what's going on here, and maybe there's going to be some kind of resolution. But why did this happen in the first place? Last week, we did an episode on one of those horns of the beast. His name is George Soros, the billionaire who not only hates Israel, but hates the United States. His own country, Hungary, has fought against him, and therefore he has turned on them and attacked them. He's not just a billionaire hedge fund manager. He's one that uses his money to influence the world and try to take down Judeo-Christian democracies. That's why he is so against the United States. How's he doing it? What's his strategy? One of many things that he does is finance the campaigns of people like Alvin Bragg in New York. He got him elected. He put the money behind putting him in this position of power so that he could set the criminals free and put legitimate citizens in jail. This kind of influence by George Soros in our society has been coming to light here recently, but the media, much of which he also controls, refuses to get on the bandwagon to expose him, except for that very conservative media that obviously can show this happening. And when you've got video evidence to back it up, it's just one more piece in the puzzle that's being used to try to wrap this world up in a neat little ball controlled by our new overlords that want to make sure that from what you eat to what you do to what kind of ways you can defend yourself publicly, all will be controlled by them. And by the way, you'll own nothing and be happy. Yes, as George Soros gets to speak at the World Economic Forum with the rest of these world elitists, he's not worried about his own protection. He's got armed bodyguards. He's got his own fenced in compounds to live in. He's the one trying to pull the strings, but make it to where you can't be a part of defending yourself. Well, as you think about how drastic this is, you think, well, boy, we ought to get behind Jose, defend him, maybe set up a GoFundMe page for him. Oh, someone tried to do that. But guess what? The woke leftists at GoFundMe pulled the page. Yes, I won't be using GoFundMe ever again. Please don't ask me to support your fundraiser on GoFundMe. These people are caught up in the same wickedness that the beast is trying to set up all around us. Well, as we go on to see where this is going, right in our face this week, the President of the United States says something that some of you commentators even said was the stupidest thing he's ever said in response to the assassination of the Japanese former prime minister. When we look at what took place with Shinzo Abe, he was killed with a gun, a homemade gun, in a nation, Japan, that has some of the strictest gun laws in the world. Joe Biden used that as a time to jump on a campaign plank and talk about gun violence. He talked about putting our flags at half-staff in the United States over gun violence. Despite the fact that there's all kinds of violence, why don't we just say violence, period? Because we watched the news stories about the guy who attacked the grandmother just putting groceries in her car in New Jersey and stabbed her to death. How about knife violence? How about the guy that literally with his fist struck a grandmother and killed her with his fist in public? No apparent reason, just, I guess, for the fun of it. What do we have here? We have a group of people being put on our streets by these DAs that are making violent crime not such a big deal and releasing these criminals out to attack us again. And we're looking at a society that's being told you can't even raise these kids in a school where the Ten Commandments are presented, where anybody acknowledges God and that he has commands like you shall not commit murder. No, there's no responsibility in eternity for all of this. It's just about what you feel like doing today. Now, in the middle of all of this, we're looking at a society with the beast that wants to disarm all law-abiding citizens, to say that you don't need weapons to defend yourself. Now, when that gang comes beating on your door and there are multiple assailants trying to break down that door, come in, attack you, rob you, maybe harm you and your family, you can only have certain ways to defend yourself. I don't know if you need to break out the antique sword or if you'll have one of the little pistols that might be a revolver. You can only use 6 or 7 shots, friends. You can't have a weapon with a magazine that could actually hold enough bullets in case you need to shoot several times. No, we've got to start taking that away from you. And if there's a very light rifle type weapon like an AR-15 that any one of you ladies could use, because no, it's not heavy like that representative lied about when she was talking about it from Capitol Hill. It's a very light weapon. It's easy to use, doesn't have much recoil, and you could actually respond to violent attackers, defend yourself instead of letting them come in and kill you. But no, we've got to remove that from all Americans. We've got to say the problem is not the idiots that we're releasing onto the street. It's not 2 million invaders from outside of our country that we're saying, come on in, just be a part of, don't worry about the old immigration laws. That's no big deal. Just come on in. We don't want to vet you. We don't want to know what kind of history you've got. You just come on in, MS-13 gang members, drug lords, drug dealers. We're just killing everybody with fentanyl they're making in China and coming right over our border from Mexico with it. No big deal. You just come on in here and do that. But in the meantime, those who are worried about the drug lords and the ones that do carry the weapons, the illegal weapons that they would never surrender, we want you, honest, law abiding citizens, to give up your firearms, because there's no way that we want you to be able to stand up against not only those criminals, but an oppressive regime that might want to take your freedoms away one day. Folks, that's what's happening in our world from the United States of America, a place that used to cherish the kind of freedom of real law abiding citizens. And instead, now we're being told you've got to line up with this new world order. Well, at the top of the concern for that seems to be where we're giving away our information left and right. Now, I've done a video before about another one of those horns of the beast, China, led by their leader. We could say he's one of the horns, or we could just say it's the Chinese dragon itself. But as we look at their way of gathering information from around the world, China is the colonial power today. They're trying to colonize all over the world, in every nation, trying to take over. They will surpass the United States as the greatest economic power in the world in this decade. And as we watch this unfolding, they are not even trying to hide the idea that they want to gather as much information about us as possible. And how are they doing it? One of the clearest ways, my friends, is through that little app that you can't miss all the advertising for. It's called TikTok. And it seems like everybody's on it. Everybody's absorbed in the videos. You can put out a video about a serious subject and you'll get a handful of views. You put out a video on TikTok of some state senator twerking in the sand upside down to somehow push forward her campaign in Rhode Island, and all of a sudden you'll get thousands of views, because the stupidity of it sometimes just makes people want to watch. What's going on here? Well, it's something you need to hear, because you may not think it affects you. It absolutely does. Now, if you're watching, for example, this on YouTube, you can hardly watch videos without the advertising, unless you've been willing to pay YouTube for the ad-free version. And the more ads you watch, the more you want to punch that button and say, yes, even though I don't like how you censor people's speech, I want to pay to get rid of these ads. But if you, like most folks, watch how these ads continually pop up, you'll see TikTok's one of the biggest advertisers out there. They're everywhere. You people, they're on Pinterest. They're on Pinterest. They are everywhere, because they are now into the how-to videos curated just for you. Is there something you should be concerned about? My friends, I'm here to tell you that TikTok is the Trojan horse inside the American information system that will eventually take us down if we are not careful. In a recent Epoch Times article, we read that TikTok is an invasive tool for Beijing. Many of our lawmakers have been warning of the threat after a report shows U.S. data is accessed in China, in Beijing. Don't be surprised. TikTok is owned by Beijing-based tech giant ByteDance and has drawn concern in the United States and elsewhere over whether its data can be accessed by the Chinese Communist Party, given that its laws compel companies to cooperate with security agencies when asked. As one person said, quote, everything is seen in China. As a matter of fact, this was a quote from a member of TikTok's Trust and Safety Department addressing a meeting that was being called about this same situation. There's nothing hidden from the Chinese Communist Party. If they come to your door and say, okay, we want the files on this person, that person, or how about everybody in the United States, every U.S. citizen, you're forced to surrender that information. No surprise there, the article says TikTok is just another invasive tool for communist China to infiltrate Americans' personal and proprietary information, says Representative Ken Buck from Colorado. This app presents a very real threat to our national security, and the United States should take strong action to stop the CCP's espionage campaign. Now, you may be wondering, well, what's the big deal? I mean, what can my fifth grader's TikTok account actually tell the Chinese Communist Party that's going to matter? You'd be surprised, especially if you're in any way connected to a local, state, or governmental agency in which you have any position whatsoever. And a position in, if you're even in a county like ours, I'm coming to you from Fairfield County, South Carolina. You would think, well, gee, nothing to see here. But yet, the two major industries that operate in our county are based in communist China. That's right. One of those, I'm not going to mention the names today, one of those actually flies out in front of their building, not only the American flag and the flag of the state of South Carolina, but the flag of Chinese Communist China. Uh, you can't make this stuff up, folks. When we think in terms of what's happening with our information, this should concern all of us. It concerned our former president. Listen to this word from a former TikTok employee. A former Chinese internet censor, Liu Luping, recently told the Epoch Times that TikTok had sought to hire people like him to monitor U.S. users. In 2018, Liu interviewed with ByteDance for a TikTok content manager position, which would expect him to inspect globalized videos on the platform. They're directly censoring American speech, he said in an interview in 2020. Now, President Donald Trump issued an executive order in August of 2020 to ban TikTok and Chinese super app WeChat, saying that the app's capture of vast swaths of Americans' data threatens to allow the Chinese Communist Party access to Americans' personal and proprietary information, potentially allowing China to track the locations of federal employees and contractors, build dossiers of personal information for blackmail, and conduct corporate espionage. Sounds like something we all would be concerned with, right? Since then, though, President Trump's order has been stalled by several lawsuits and court orders. These folks who like to just, if you tie it up in court long enough, you still win, don't you? But then in July 2021, President Joe Biden revoked Trump's executive order, instead directing the Commerce Department to evaluate the platform to determine whether it poses a national security risk or not. Then we have the revelations this week about President Joe Biden's great, wonderful action to release our strategic oil reserves to help with the price of gas being so high. Isn't he just concerned about you to no end? Then we find out that he releases a huge part of that reserve to a Chinese oil company. That's right, and all of those are under the control of the Chinese Communist Party, a company in which his son Hunter is heavily invested. Folks, not only can you not make this stuff up, the question is, why isn't someone in jail for this? Why isn't the president being impeached over this? It's a good question. Now, Casey Fleming, a cybersecurity analyst and CEO of strategic advisory firm Black Ops Partners, said that Beijing's global ambition should ring alarm bells in regard to technology from China. One thing he always tells people who consult him on such matters, Fleming says, is that, quote, you've got to understand that every piece of technology coming from China is weaponized. Think about that for just a minute. Who wants to be the strongest military in the world? China. They're working hard at building theirs while ours is collapsing. They will be the largest economy in the world by the middle of this decade. China wants to take over. They make no secret of that. It's a part of their strategic plan. Personal data is very, very valuable because it paints a picture of who one's connected to, their business transactions, their smartphone activities, and what they will do in the future, said Fleming. The way TikTok is programmed to trap the audience on the app is also a form of psychological control, he said. So, friends, listen, when you look at how our young people, and for those of you like me that work a lot with youth in our country today, No, you know how this thing just reels you in, and all of a sudden, your young person, your child, may be spending hours and hours a week on TikTok. They are reeling them in for the psychological control aspect, and at the same time mining all the information from your family that they can possibly get. Why are you and your kids still on TikTok? And by the way, you'll see how much control they have if you try to get it away from your kids, to try to get them to delete it off of their phone. This is a part of the strategy of the beast. Because, friends, World War III will definitely be an info war. The country that has the greatest intelligence will win it. It's not about who has the best new cutting edge technology, even though China's working on having all of that as well to be superior over us. As they get ready to invade Taiwan, getting ready for the right timing, we've got to wonder, what do they think will allow them to succeed against the great United States of America? Could it be that if they know everything about us, know our greatest secrets, they'll be able to be one step ahead in whatever we do? Listen to what he said in the rest of this article. He said, the thing that most people don't really understand is the Chinese Communist Party's values and goals are completely opposite of the US and the free world. They want to completely control it. So there are no independent companies in China. The CCP completely commands and controls in there. Anybody engaging in business or other pursuits in China is subject to CCP law in China. Now, friends, in light of all of that, I want you to think of something else we heard as the beast is at work. So busy around the world, we tend to think, but not here in the USA. While they are building the strongest military in the world, what are we doing? You see, all branches of the U.S. military announced this week they will miss their recruiting goals this year, every single one of them. Why is it that no one wants to join the U.S. military these days? Well, it's not just about who wants to join, it's about how they're filtering out all the wrong people. The advertising is turned very much woke in accordance with the demands of this current administration. And so it seems like we're more concerned about diversity in our military than the strength of it. Filtering recruits has become one of the big new pushes of the Biden administration, because we've got to watch out for two things. Number one, we've got to have recruits who have been vaccinated with one of just a couple of mRNA vaccines that are approved by us. We've got to make sure, no, forget all the rest of those around the world that might work. No, let's think in terms of the ones we want in force in their bodies, even if they might be old and ineffective, even if they're not working right now to keep people from having COVID-19. No, let's make sure we have inoculated every one of these troops with those, even though we've got some people. I read the article of the one pilot in particular, an F-16 pilot, who's saying he's watched some of his friends who've been vaccinated get myocarditis. He's not willing to take this vaccine, and he's being discharged. A great F-16 pilot. Listen, F-16 pilots don't grow on trees, my friends, but because he does not want this shot, doesn't want to put himself in danger from blacking out and other things while he's flying, he's the one that's demonized. He will have to walk away from our military. So while we are in a pilot shortage today, losing pilots left and right, we're also being told that you can't come on board unless you get this particular vaccine from one of these giant drug companies that right now is bigger. If you take companies like Pfizer, they are richer than most countries in the world. They carry an immense amount of political power and lobbying power with our country. Secondly, not only is vaccination an important thing to filter these new recruits with, but secondly, you've got to watch for extremism. And when I read this article and it talked about trying to weed out the extremists, who do you think they were talking about? Foreign terrorists, folks that might be part of Al Qaeda or something else? Oh no, as they began to define extremism, you'd discover if you're one of those folks who, perhaps the 75 million that voted for Donald Trump, if you think there was something suspicious about the last election, if you think there's something wrong with this current administration, if your values look more conservative Christian than they do left wing woke ideologues, then we don't want you in the military. You're a violent extremist. We don't want anybody like you carrying a gun around to defend the country. You're from the wrong kind of people. In fact, the article went on to talk about the problems with the U.S. military and said, now, this is one of the problems we have, that 86% of our pilots are white. We can't have that. That's wrong. Wait a minute, are we going to have a quota system now for pilots? I thought we were supposed to be colorblind about these things. Do you want the best pilots, the ones that really want to fly, willing to pay the price to become the best of the best? Or do you want to say, oh no, we've got to have a certain group, representative group from all kinds of backgrounds or ethnicities and nationalities or whatever, and that must be the way we bring in pilots, not who are the best ones to fly our fighter jets in a time of war. And the complaint was not only 86% of these pilots are white, but something else is wrong with our military. Too many of them come from the South. Yes, I'm a Southerner, born in Georgia, have ministered in the Carolinas, have a family in Tennessee. Yes, and there's something about Southern heritage. Southerners tend to want to stand up for their country and defend their freedoms. So quite often, more Southerners are found in the military than from other regions of the United States. Oh, there's something wrong with that. These people are too right leaning. They just might have wrong ideas. We don't want those ideas in the military. So we've got a military that right now is trying to filter out some of those folks that have fought for our country for generations and say, you can't come, you won't be allowed in, while saying we've got to put together a military that looks more woke than ever before. What does that do to our military? It makes it in a time in which we are facing perhaps a brand new set of global conflicts, one in which many of our own lawmakers have said we're already involved in Ukraine. Yes, while you can't find baby formula and your gas prices are high, we have sent a ridiculous amount of money in one bill alone, $40 billion. You couldn't find a few million to finish building walls on our border. You say, oh no, that's not possible. But we're sending all this money overseas to a war we're already involved in, looking at the possibility of more wars breaking out. Because of that, we are then shrinking our military, can't reach our recruiting goals, trying to make it weaker, almost as if you say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. It's no longer a conspiracy, my friends. It's obvious. As our military grows weaker, China and Russia and other countries determined to make theirs stronger, we have set the world up for a scary scenario that's coming, a scenario I think the Bible predicted, ultimately leading to something called Armageddon. The good news in all of this bad news is that Jesus is coming, my friends. And if you're not ready, get ready to meet him soon. He's on his way. He is our hope in the middle of all this activity of the beast this week. God bless you. I'll see you right here again next week for another biblical perspective in each and every day as we wake up in God's Word.